And that was like the moment that I was like, oh, my whole world as I know it is about to be changed, right? And I was a little entrepreneur and I didn't know it. So I remember laying in bed praying to God saying, okay, so please don't let him come home drunk. And if he does, please let him fall asleep fast. I would just, as a little girl, pray for peace. I would be missing so much. And so I think there's a lot of wisdom in saying, look, it's not always easy. And it's not for sure that you can live with someone for the rest of your life. Stuff happens, and I'm not judging anyone who makes a different choice, but I'm so glad I made, and it wasn't even actually a choice. It's not like I was like, can I stay or can I go?
Yeah.
It was more like wondering. And I was holding my sister's hand until I wasn't, and I broke loose and I ran right in front of a car, which my body was underneath the tire of.
The assumption is I'm going to grab this new stuff and add it to my life. I'm going to reinvent myself as this whole new person. But the reality is you're letting go of all the fake stuff, and who you really are is starting to be presented to the world. It's extraordinary and humbling to be a witness to human beings that are making these incredible commitments, isn't it?
It is. It's a privilege.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 2 of the Reinvention Unlimited podcast. I'm really excited today. This is the podcast where it's about people's lives. I'm interested in people, in their lives, what shaped them, the challenges they came up with, and what it took for them to overcome those things. Basically, how do you reinvent yourself? How do you keep going from reinvention to reinvention? So my guest today is a master at this. I'm really excited. So you ever had an experience in your life where you meet someone and then you feel instantly related? So this is a friend I didn't know I had, Charrise McCrorey. That's what happened between Charisse and I. I met her in 2006. That was in Sacramento, California. We were at a business coach training together, kind of looked at each other and just instant connection. So from there, we have continued to be in contact on and off throughout the last 14 years. I can't believe it's been 14 years. I feel old. Anyways, so when I think of Charisse, she just makes me smile. She fills me with warm, loving feels every single time. So let me tell you about my precious friend Charisse that you're going to meet in just a few minutes or a few seconds. So first of all, Charisse has been in the business world her whole life. She's been the one who bosses go to ask for strategies, opinions, that sort of thing. And the thing I can say about her, she's extraordinarily creative. Now, it'd be rare to meet a human being as creative as Charisse. She's one of those people that is always oozing creativity. So she's worked as a business and life coach. She's worked with organizations like the U.S. State Department. Can you believe that? All the way down to your local mom and pop store, which you can probably see out your window there. So here's a picture of her. Look at that. What an amazing picture, right? So here, I've never read anything that Charisse has written that I haven't liked, right? And that's saying something. So eventually, this skill she has of writing led her to co-author a book with David Firth called Rise, How to Ignite Your Mojo and Make a World in Which You'd Like to Live. There it is right there. She actually gave me a copy of the book. It was amazing, absolutely amazing. In addition to her amazing writing and coaching career, Charisse is also an accomplished professional artist. So, in fact, you can view her art in Instagram at Great Mother Art. So that's at Great Mother Art. It'll be in the show notes. Her commitment to authentic, pure expression of her creativity has led her in many different directions, making her an expert in change, transformation, and personal development. Her main website is emergencebusinesscoaching.com, but I will say this, a more recent project where she's created a community online for midlife women can be found at bewildlyhappy.com. Now, of course, as you know, I'm not a midlife woman, but I like women things. I'm very feminine, and I appreciate that. I did a thing for women, business women, at one point for just an all-day training. And I've coached women in business, so I love it. So I went to bewildlyhappy.com, watched her video, and laughed and chuckled through the whole thing. She is so authentic and real in the video. You got to go there and watch the video. Last thing I'll say before we begin is she's been married to the love of her life, Michael, since 1982. She has two amazing grown children, adult children, two adorable grandchildren, and is caregiver to her beloved mother. You can contact her at cmcmcCRorey@gmail.com. And we'll see her right after this. Hey, Charisse, there you are.
Hi, George. Wow, I love your video reel.
Do you? Thank you.
Yeah.
I made it myself. What can I say? I love doing it. And it's creative, Charisse. It's creative.
I know. I love the idea of doing it, but I don't love doing it. So hats off to you doing it.
Absolutely. So listen, so let's begin. I'm so happy and excited to have you here. And I want to begin the beginning of your life. So tell me where were you born?
Oh, I was born in 1961 at Elkhart General Hospital, which is from where I'm sitting today, about 10-minute drive.
Wow.
I grew up, though, for my formative years in Union, Michigan on Long Lake, which was an idyllic setting to grow up. It's a small lake with a lot of marshland around it. And I was the third of four children.
Wow.
So my two older sisters, my closest to age sister is 5 years older and my other sister is 7 years older. So it was kind of like my mom and dad had two sets of kids. So by the time I came along, my sisters were into other things, and I got to be completely left alone a lot, just to play in the woods that was next door, and with the frogs and the turtles, and make sassafras tea in the woods, and
you played with frogs and turtles. Seriously?
Yeah. Oh yeah, seriously. And so, in fact, there's a story I will get to during this interview because it's so good. The idea, though, I guess, is that in the very beginning of my life, there was a fair amount of drama in my personal life and in my childhood years. My mom and dad were in the stages of becoming eventually divorced when I was 8. But
Ouch.
Before that, and actually woven through that, I had this grounding place of nature, which I feel so blessed and fortunate to have. We had a lot of chaos, but I always could go back to the grounding force of nature. So even in the midst of, like, I remember one time my brother, my sister and I actually were on the swing set that was in our backyard, and my mom and dad were in the house and we could hear them fighting. And we were swinging and we were outside and we were playing. And I remember saying to my sister, "Are they going to get divorced?" And she said yes. And that was like the moment that I was like, oh, my whole world as I know it is about to be changed, right? And I was, I don't know, 7 maybe or 8. But the point is we were outside, and that's where we always were. And so I was able then, I think I used nature even then just as sort of a resting place, because there was so much chaos and drama on the interior parts of my life.
Thank goodness. So that whole entire area, I guess, is forest. There was like tons of nature.
There was a woods next between our property and our neighbors, and there was a well-worn path in that woods because we would go over and visit with our neighbor who was elderly and childless, whose name was Vera. And everything over there was peaceful and quiet and calm. And we literally beat that dirt path into existence between our home, the woods in the middle, and her home on the other side.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So was it a small community that you grew up in?
Oh gosh, yes. It was very small.
What size?
I would say, it's a lake community. And at the time, 59 years ago, it was not as popular of a lake as it is now. At the time, it was a small fishing lake, and now it's a major boating, all sports lake. But I would say at the time, there might have been a couple thousand people in the community total. So it was very rural. It still is rural, but there's more people that are attracted to that lake now. So.
Was it like we always read and hear, where it's in a small town where everyone knew everyone and you couldn't get away with anything?
Yeah, and in those days, that was a beautiful thing because we could run free. We were.
Yeah.
My mom was working by the time, all the time. My mom was always working a couple different jobs, so we were to our own devices a lot. And so it was in those days we weren't wearing seatbelts. We were just flopping around.
My dad would cut him out of the car.
Yeah, I actually drove the car one time down a hill accidentally.
Gosh.
So yeah, there were very unbridled years, and having a small community like that where we kind of trusted who we knew was part of the reason that worked back in those days. I remember, though, it was a very white community. It was very very undiverse. There wasn't much diversity to speak of. And I remember we had a store that was probably about a mile down the road. It was the candy store, Clara's. And we spent a lot of time down there because we just walked back and forth. And one time I was in that store and there was a really tall black man in the store.
That's a rarity, eh?
I was scared to death.
Really?
I had never seen any person of color. I mean, I was so sheltered in this community. And I can remember that like it was yesterday, just looking up at this guy like, wow.
There's other humans that don't look like me? What is going on?
I know. So that was my first taste of diversity. And then, ironically, so when up and through 6th grade, I lived in Union, Michigan on Long Lake. And then my mother remarried, and we moved to a place called Cassopolis, Michigan, which was a lot bigger and a lot more culturally diverse. So it was probably a 60% African-American population to my 40%.
That's quite a difference.
Yeah. And it was amazing, George. It was so amazing to see, even though it's not a huge world, but compared to where I came from, it was a lot bigger. And so I got some cultural training early on, thank goodness. And I wouldn't trade those years, although they were also really hard, tumultuous years. I wouldn't trade that experience of being in a diverse cultural place for anything.
Yeah, where I grew up in Canada, we're very diverse here, and like we never, there's people from all over here in Canada. So I growing up was always is very different. I mean, it'd be odd to just have all white people. It'd be like really weird. Like
we didn't know it was weird though.
Yeah, I know. When you're in it, how do you know, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, what was the best part growing up for you? Like, what was the best part?
The best part was the nature.
Nature.
That was the best part. I also had I had a lot of really good quality time with my sisters, even though they were older, and my younger brother came after me.
Yeah.
And we, there was a time when my brother ran away from home because he was a rebel, and he literally had the stick with the handkerchief on the end, moping around the house. We were hiding and looking out the windows, watching him think he was running away from us. I mean, we had adventures, George. I don't know that they happen in the same way today. Tell
me one. What's an adventure?
Well, okay. So one time I'm down at the lake by myself because I was perfectly fine. In underwater, I would be swimming like the fish with the fish. I felt like I was a fish. Nobody was ever around. I was doing that stuff all by myself.
That's awesome.
And I was down looking for frogs and turtles. And I just would, I'd literally catch them and look at them and let them go. And so one day there was a frog, but it was a monster frog. I am not kidding, George. This frog was bigger than a basketball. I can't see even my whole hand.
Well, I've never seen that.
Bigger than a basketball. It was, and I literally wasn't sure I actually saw it or I made it up because I went back home and I told my sisters, "Oh my gosh, I saw this frog, which is this huge frog," and I'm using my hands to gesture how big it is. Both my sisters are like, "Really?" They call me Reese, come on. So, and I was like, clearly, I was intimidated by this frog. I was
no kidding.
Concerned. I didn't even know such a thing existed. So then a couple weeks later, my sister, the closest age to me, Valerie, she saw the same frog. So I was validated.
Yes.
So now we have that thread. Like I may have told some untruths in my young years, but that wasn't one of them.
Yeah.
It was just stuff like that. We made up stories. We made up. My sister and I used to play like we were making television commercials in the mirror. We would always just be doing just play without video, without gadgets, without. It was just pure play.
Yeah, it's hard to see kids doing that nowadays. I mean, with all the technology and electronics around, it's amazing. You know, take away the iPad, they don't know what to do. And I mean, I used to do the same thing when I was little, right? We used to go out and play guns and shoot each other and stuff like that, pretend, and it's like you couldn't see kids doing that nowadays. It was also, I think, a lot safer too back then.
Well, here's a story about safety. I actually I was a little entrepreneur and I didn't know it. So I would have garage sales. They were not in a garage because we didn't have a garage. They were table sales. I would go around the house collecting other people's things and I would put them in the sale. And then I got the idea, we have magazines that they're just going to go to waste. I'm going to go door to door and sell these magazines. So I literally took all of our used magazines and went around to the neighbors and said, hey, do you want to buy some magazines?
Wow. Now
when I look at that, I'm like, oh my gosh, if I was the mom in that case, I would say, do not go to people's doors trying to sell them stuff.
Exactly.
I did it anyway. I was unsupervised.
You did it anyways.
I did it anyway.
You had your eye on the prize.
Well, I don't know what moved me to do it, but I did it. That's all I remember. I just remember thinking, well, what somebody needs to use. They're worth something.
Well, there you go. Right at a young age, there you are, somebody who wants to contribute, who wants to actually, and that's who you are today. I mean, just all the way through. Absolutely. So listen, you mentioned that you had some difficult times as well. What was the worst times of your childhood? I mean, those things shape us.
Yeah. So my mom and dad were, when my dad died, he told me that she was the love of his life, but they didn't act like that because they were also partiers. So my dad drank in excess, and he was not a mean person when he drank, but he was a party guy, and that wasn't good with 4 children at home.
Right.
So eventually when they divorced, that really wasn't all that difficult because he wasn't around much anyway. Right. And I didn't have a great relationship with him. I didn't have the same dad that my 2 older sisters had because they had the dad that was attentive and there, and I had the one that was never showing up.
Wow.
So, I mean, that just is what it is. But then the worst part, I would say, when my mom remarried, she, of course, married another alcoholic. And this time he was physically abusive. So he was one of those mean drunks. So when he drank, he would be. His
personality would change.
His personality changed. When he was not drinking, he was Mr. Generous, Mr. Happy-go-lucky, and gave us things.
Yeah, that's the worst.
He gave us things we never had, and then he would be drunk, come home. I remember laying in bed praying to God, saying, "Okay, so please don't let him come home drunk, and if he does, please let him fall asleep fast." I would just, as a little girl, pray for peace. Basically.
So how old would you say? I mean, you're going through this at what age?
Yeah, it was between 10 and 13. So it was 7th, 8th, and early 9th grade.
What a pressure.
Yeah. So, and I was, even then, now looking back, first of all, I was kind of the mother for my brother because I needed to be there. And also, I was a codependent kid. So I wanted peace, and I was always the one trying to clean stuff up and trying to put it back together and trying to take care of mom. And so that was really kind of a defining part of my life. And here I am still kind of doing that in so many ways. I'm a caregiver.
You're looking after your mom right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing.
So that ended in a very abrupt way. My mother finally, after many times packing all of our stuff in garbage bags and going to grandma and grandpa's, finally she decided to divorce him. And on the day that her divorce was final with him, he called her at her work and shot himself in the head and killed himself.
Oh my gosh.
So I was at a sleepover at a friend's house,
Yeah.
and I got a call from the mom of the friend got a call saying they're coming to get me. Something happened, and interesting. It's just weird how stuff is, but I had wished him dead a few times because he was such a hardship for us.
Right.
And my immediate like, oh, how could I? And then also back in those days, so that would have been in like 1973 or 4 ish, early 70s.
Yeah.
Therapy wasn't really a thing. We totally
No.
needed it, but we didn't get it. And
Yeah.
actually, I didn't even know what happened because my mom told me. I know what happened because I overheard my mom tell my older sisters I was supposed to be sleeping and I wasn't. So it was just this weird thing that nobody ever talked about. It was horrific. It was horrific for my mom to have to experience that. And for her then to just try to pick up herself by the bootstraps and carry on. And for me to be the caregiver and the one, again, trying to clean it all up and make peace. So then by the time I was a freshman, I was going into my freshman year when that happened.
Wow. Well, that's, and you say we needed therapy, like same here. I mean, when I was 5, my dad got custody of my brother and sister, and I'm the youngest of 3, right? So it was like, my mom was schizophrenic. She was mentally ill, and no one sat me down and said, hey, this is what your mom's illness is. That, like, you know how much that would have contributed to me?
No.
Right? And it just messes you up. And there's so many people in our generation that all through needed that, right? It wasn't until much years later. And I think that's why you and I are attracted to this business, because it in a way, it helped us to overcome and to really live and be more creative in life. And I'm so grateful for the coaching industry. Glad it appeared when it did.
Yes. And I think in the absence of processing it as a child, you have to at some point process. You just do. I mean, I'm sure people die before processing, but it's not ideal. So I have used my 15 almost years in the world of coaching to do the work that I needed to do for myself. Yeah. And because I had some trauma in my past, I also have a lot of compassion and empathy for those I work with who have stuff like that maybe unprocessed. I'm not a therapist. I do not try to be a therapist. But I can relate, and I think George, you and I probably agree. When you're with a therapist, you're focusing a lot on the past, and as a coach, we focus a lot on the future. We look at what happened and we say, "Oof, ouch, yeah, that happened. So now what? Now where do we go?"
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm writing my own memoir right now, and I'm reliving. I never thought in a million years that it'd be hard, but it's probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, because you're literally reliving those moments, right? And it's amazing. So you were a freshman. So tell me about school. Like, what kind of student were you? What was your favorite subject? Things like that.
School was so dang easy for me, George.
Was it?
I completely.
It's hard for me.
I was in the almost most popular group. Like, I was in the topper echelon, and yet I never really. I was very social, and I had a best friend and in a core friend group. I was friends with a lot of guys. I was kind of that kind of friend. I fell in love with the quarterback of the football team early on.
Of course you did.
And he didn't love me back the way I loved him. He wanted to use me as a counselor for all of his girlfriend troubles.
Oh my
gosh. At that age, I just I felt like I was privileged to be in that position. The one thing that happened that showed me this was he had a broken arm from playing football, and I sheepishly never had spoken to him before. This was in 8th grade, so it was before high school, but I sheepishly said, "Hey, can I sign your cast?" And he said, "Well, sure, anybody can sign my cast. Of course you can sign my cast." And that was like, ooh, because he was the big dude on campus. Yeah. So anyway, my social life was active. My school life, I loved English. My favorite teacher, Mrs. Barr. I loved the idea that I could be a writer even then.
Wow, really? Way back then too?
I wrote an essay and I submitted it to a contest and didn't get chosen, so I stopped writing.
Ah, come on. I love your writing.
I know. You're the one that told me I could pick it back up, actually. I hadn't really picked it back up until I met you, and you said, you should be writing a book, Charisse, and I started writing a blog instead. But anyway, yes, that I give you credit for that, because I have written a lot since you said that.
I had no idea. I just know you were submitting things on the blog, and I was reading them, and the experience of reading your stuff was anticipation. And I love that. So when I'm reading your stuff, I feel, oh, what's next? Where's she going now? Where's she going? I don't get that a lot. Even when I read Steve Chandler's stuff, I don't have that anticipation. So I really enjoy your writing.
Thank you. I'm working on some stuff.
Cool. Awesome. So, anyone have a big impact on you growing up, on your life growing up?
Yeah, I would say my grandma and grandpa. So my mom's mom and dad.
Tell me about them.
We had pure chaos compared to their pure order.
Wow, what a difference.
My dad was, I think he was an artist spirit. And my mom was very social, and neither of them really cared about order. So our place was always a mess. It was a hot mess. There were piles of clothes everywhere. When grandma was coming, we had to clean because mom was embarrassed about how unorganized we were. So when we would show up to my grandma and grandpa's house, they lived in Elkhart, so it was a 20-minute drive. We would have our grocery bag full of clothes. Grandma would immediately wash them and fold them and tidy them and feed us. She fed us. That was her way of showing love, which is part of my journey also, because when I'm stressed, that's what I'm doing. I'm eating. She's the one that taught me food equals love. And my grandpa was stern. You didn't want to cross him. He was a kind man and a good provider, but we were chaotic, and he liked order. So he was a father figure to me. In a way that I didn't even know until later, and was a source of stability, which was so needed in my life and the lives of my siblings.
So what was it like experientially for you to go over there? Emotionally, what do you remember?
I remember I could relax. I didn't have to be on edge. I wasn't worried about, and there was no drinking happening. So I was safe. It was the safe place for me. Incredible. And we also did really fun things there. They had a little toy organ. I used to play the organ. I had never learned how to play anything. And I would sing, and they had a tape recorder, and we'd make up songs, and we'd sing, and we'd play act. And my cousins would sometimes come over, and they were kind of in our same age group. So sometimes we played school a lot. School was a constant for us. So we did a lot of typical kid things, but we did it in a safe environment, so we could just really relax and be, and not have to worry about
incredible
danger.
Isn't it incredible, just the dichotomy between having a free-for-all and then having order, and how the order brings such an incredible stability, and almost fuels the creativity that you have.
100%. It makes it okay. It makes it's the foundation for it. And I've actually learned that in my adult life as well. Like, I need some discipline. As a writer, as a creator, as a maker, I literally create time and space to do that alongside a very vigorous work schedule, because for some reason, I'm better at it that way. Like if I had full day and I could do anything in it, I'd probably produce less creatively.
That's so true. Mm-hmm. And then having, I found is to have rituals. And I have a certain thing in the morning. I'll get up. I have to make my bed and shave before I do anything else. That's just the way it is. So I have 20 minutes to do that. So I'm like, I got to get this done, and then I have to drink 24 ounces of water before I go jogging. Sometimes I'm at the fridge just chugging it because I'm late. But I'm not going to go with that, those type of things. Right. And when you're done, it's like, oh, look what I accomplished already. And it just fuels the energy, right? I love that. So, so what was graduation from high school like? Were you like most of us, where you didn't have a clue what you wanted, or you thought you knew, and then it had nothing to do with what you wanted?
I was really fortunate to be best friends with my best friend all the years of high school, and we were going to the same college, and we were going to be roommates. So, yeah, we had T-shirts made. One said and the other said "oh." We were literally one time for Halloween we were Siamese twins. We sewed some overalls together, and we had the same classes. We went everywhere. So my friend Melody, she's still a dear friend of mine. So it wasn't scary because we were doing it together, and I of course had no money. So everything that I went to college on was financial aid. Mm-hmm. And so I remember so vividly the first day of class, I went to my class and it was canceled, and I found out all of my classes were canceled because the financial aid package didn't come through and it wasn't paid for.
Oh my.
And I remember breaking out in hives and having panic attack and having to go. In those days, nothing was electronic. So every single class that I wanted to sign up for was in a drop ad line. So the lines were like crazy long, and I ended up getting a full slate of classes, and it got paid for through financial aid. But so we did the normal party free, although I was free most of my life, so it wasn't as much of that for me as it was for my roommate, my best friend Melody. I had all kinds of freedom. You know, back in the day, George, we were literally at keg parties in high school on Saturday every single week.
Yeah.
That was how it was in high school.
Yeah.
So I had all that. I had already had some practice.
Yeah, I know. It's like, so it was like that. Yeah, and it's a small town, so there's not like much to do anyways.
Right.
So.
Yeah, so we cruise in the town, and that's what we do. So anyway, I that wasn't all that new to me. I took general ed because I didn't know what I was going to do.
Yeah.
And in January of 1980, my freshman year of college, I know you're going to ask me this. I'm beating you to it. I met my husband.
Yeah, Michael.
We, each of us independently showed up at a party on campus, and neither of us knew whose party it was, but somebody else that we knew whose party it was. So we ended up in the same place. And the woman that we went with left, and we didn't have a car, and it was just long enough of a walk that we didn't want to walk at night.
Yeah.
So we saw a guy that lived in our dorm who was there with a car, and we asked for a ride home, and his friend, Michael, my husband, was with him.
Nice.
So they brought us back to the dorm, and we hung out for a little bit later in our dorm, and I remember Mike was leaving, and Mike and Malcolm were leaving, and Mike said something like, "I'm going to call you."
He said that?
He said that. Like, he took my number, I'm going to call you. And I was like, yeah, well, whatever. Sure, you're going to. Well, he did. And from that weekend until, I don't know, we never broke up. We never fought. We have been lovers and friends since 1980.
So rare.
Which is a 38-year marriage that we're in, and I'm telling you, George, it just gets nothing but better. The older we grow, the more we start working on different dreams, the longer we've had to sort of grow up together, because I was only 18 and he was only 19, and we were married when I was 20.
Yeah,
and I
so
had Megan.
Actually.
Yeah, we raised each other. We formed each other into the people we wanted each other to be, which is cool, right?
It is cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're still in love.
Yeah, I'm still in love.
So am I with my wife. I mean, it's amazing when you work at it. Many, you must have had times when it was rough. I mean, every relationship goes through that.
Yeah.
I mean, we did, but through it all, there's that underlying, we're going to figure this out. I mean, I never even thought about you, but I never, like, the idea of divorce or murder was a possibility, but not divorce.
I tell young married folks this a lot, George, because I think it's really useful. So in my mid-30s, I really missed a whole chunk of life because I didn't date a lot. I fell in love with my high school quarterback, and really didn't. Mike was really my first serious relationship, and in my mid-30s, I was like, really? I signed up forever with this guy? Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I wasn't really thinking of divorce. I was just thinking, woof, that was a big commitment. Forever is a long damn time. And
sorry, when did this hit you?
I was in my mid-30s. Like kids were my kids were in grade school, and we were busy, and we both had careers, and we weren't paying a lot of attention to each other probably.
That's so funny. Same thing happened to me.
We get through really the same thing.
Same thing. That's why I'm laughing.
We get through this, right? And we're I had dropped out of college because the only thing I actually knew I wanted to do was get married, have a family.
Yeah.
And I knew that I was going to do work, but I didn't know what it was, and I didn't have it. I ran out of financial aid and didn't have the dream or direction to do anything about that. So I went back to work and figured my career out, which is another long story. But with our marriage, I just stuck, and I did the best I can. I was not great all the time. Trust me. I was not a great wife all the time or mother. There were times, but now when I'm on the other side of this with our 2 grandchildren, and we are now just about to the end of our work, and we have this future together that's so easy and peaceful and loving and kind and gentle and exciting. And if I had not stuck back in those early days in the mid-30s, when I was in my 30s, if I had said, no, I'm not, there's somebody else I'm going to go get. I would be missing so much. And so I think there's a lot of wisdom in saying, look, it's not always easy. And it's not for sure that you can live with someone for the rest of your life. Stuff happens, and I'm not judging anyone who makes a different choice, but I'm so glad I made, and it wasn't even actually a choice. It's not like I was like, can I stay or can I go? Yeah. It was more like wondering, wow, this is just a long time. It's a long time I didn't take the commitment as seriously as I should have when I said yes and dragged Mike down the aisle to get married, right?
Dragged Mike.
And then when I'm imagining the rest of our life, I'm like, oh boy, big. And having both of us missed a lot. We missed, and we talk about that now. We missed a lot of the travel and the income gathering things that some of our friends did. Yeah. But neither of us would trade it for anything. We are each other's best friend, and we really, really respect and admire each other for who we are, and that's not easy to find in the world. So I'm just so grateful we have that.
Oh, it's I love I can't remember. I first heard Werner Erhard talk about commitment to a marriage. He said it's not 50-50, it's 100-0. And if each partner comes at their marriage from, I'm 100% responsible for this marriage, and they're 0. So if I get 5% back, I'm overjoyed because I don't expect anything back. Yeah. And I took that on early and saved my marriage because it was, I was where you were. I was like, maybe there is someone else, and looking around, and it, man, that's for anyone who is, you don't see marriages last very long nowadays. It's like a lost art. Yep. And it's like, okay, like look at us. We've lasted 30 years, but they're unhappy. They can't stand each other. Like that's, right. I decided early on, like, okay, this is forever. So I'm going to have this be amazing because I don't want to have a boring, horrible existence with this person. No. You know? I have a brand called Be Wildly Happy. Yeah. Really?
It's a commitment.
That's awesome. So, describe a time, I guess the first time in your life, up until now, where you didn't know if you're going to make it or not.
Well, there are 2 times that I can recall. I was a little girl. We were in downtown Elkhart going to a local theater. I think we were going to see Mary Poppins. Yeah. And I was holding my sister's hand until I wasn't, and I broke loose, and I ran right in front of a car, which my body was underneath the tire of. I did not did not get run over. The car was able to stop by some miracle intervention, I'm going to say.
Yeah.
And at the time, I probably didn't fully understand the gravity of that, but my sister will talk about it still to this day, how it cost her life, because her life flashed before her on her watch. I get hit by a car and get killed because I was just a little slip of a thing. I was tiny as a little girl.
Yeah.
And I was very, I flit about like a little hummingbird. And so I'm sure I was easy to lose. So anyway, that was one time. And then the second time was actually stress induced. So I was at a job right before I met you, and the job was killing me, and I was working long hours trying to save it. And it was the first time in my life that I hadn't really rocked something out. I rise to challenges and beat them usually. And so I was feeling very stressed, and I found out that I had contracted viral meningitis. And so I was in the hospital.
What is viral meningitis for those?
Viral meningitis is a virus. Well, meningitis is either bacterial or viral, and the bacterial kind will kill you. The viral kind will just make you really super sick. And so I had a sinus headache, I thought. I went to the doctor, and sinus headache. And that was on a Friday. And then by Sunday, I couldn't even stand up. I stood up and fell down, and I was unconscious.
So you had vertigo as well?
It wasn't vertigo. It was spinal cord fluid. So
oh my gosh.
Right on the back of your
painful.
neck, it builds up, and it messes with your frontal cortex eventually. So it's brain related. And
Scary.
so I was not with it. I was completely out of it. And Mike took me to the hospital, and it took a little while for them to figure out what it was, but I had the most excruciating headaches. I had high fever, really super bad headache. I couldn't even moving my head that much was painful.
Wow.
So I said to Mike after about 5 days in the hospital, honey, just tell me. I know I'm dying. Just tell me. I felt like I was dying. He said, you're not dying. And because it was viral and not bacterial, chances are I wasn't going to die, but I certainly felt like I was dying. And so that was really bad. And then so I got out of the hospital after about 10 days, and I was on a horrific amount of opioids and all sorts of pain killing things just to function. So it took me about 9 months to be some semblance of normal. And I still, even now, 15 years later, I still get headaches, and they're memory headaches. They're meningitis.
So this happened on the weekend with this job, this horrible job. Did the job have anything to do with this, do you think, or is it?
Well, I asked the doctor how I could get such a thing, and he said, well, you can get it from, it's a virus, so you can get it from anywhere, but do you have much stress in your life?
Yes.
And I said, yeah. And when I thought about where that stress was coming from, it was completely the job. So I blame the whole thing on stress, and my allowing that stress to really affect my well-being. And then that was a sign for me. And God was like, okay, sister, slow your roll, figure this out. And I then just said, I went back to my boss, and after being on Vicodin and having no filter whatsoever, I don't know if anybody else listening is familiar with that drug, but at the time when I had never taken it, and I took it, and I was like, ooh, wow, I can just say anything I want. So I went to my boss and I said, dude, this is too hard. This is not my legacy. I'm not going to give my life for this job. I would like to have an exit plan. And I got one. By the next day, he fired me. So
wow. Okay. Compassionate guy.
That's the beautiful time when I recovered. My husband was diagnosed with cancer a few months later. So I was recovering from being fired, from being sick. And my husband was recovering from melanoma. And I didn't think I could ever work for anyone ever again. Yeah. After having worked in a lot of different areas with a lot of different bosses. So I found businesscoach.com on Career Builder in the fall of that year, and thank goodness for that.
Yeah, and that's your reinvent. That's your first reinvention,
that's my first reinvention. Well, no, it wasn't my first, but it was one of many.
Ah, yes.
But George, I love it because it's how I met you.
Yeah.
So that was a pivotal time in my life. I met a whole bunch of people that have been really important to me at that time.
So what was the process like? Because that's you rebuilding everything. It's the reinvention comes with there's a process, right, to reinvent yourself. Do you remember what you went through? Can you look back now?
I can look at that one example, and I think it's a pretty dramatic example because I had health issues. A lot of people have that though. So I remember spending a lot of time in the fetal position in my bed. I didn't know what to do. I wasn't a doer anymore. I was always a doer, and I didn't have anything to do, and I didn't have the physical capacity to do it anyway. So I was really lost, and I didn't know how I was going to come out of it. There was a cocoon that I was in, but I didn't know if I was going to be a butterfly or not. I did not know. And I did have some medication alongside that, which kept me cloudy. So at one point early in the process, I said, no, I'm getting rid of all this medication because I can't think clearly. So I didn't have medication probably for more than a couple of weeks once I got back home. But I was definitely with 3-day in bed headaches. So I had a lot of time to think.
Yeah.
And I knew what I didn't want.
That's a good place to start.
I knew what I didn't want, and I felt such ferocious love from my family, and I felt so supported, and I felt like I actually could, for the first time in my life. I was in my mid-40s. The first time in my life I could really take a pause because I didn't really see much choice. Financially, it was not really very easy because taking a pause meant taking no income, but when I look back on it, it was really valuable metamorphosis time for me. I didn't know. I did a lot of praying. I was at the mercy of God many times on my knees. What the hell? What the hell? What's next? What is this about? I did a lot of personal development during that time, which I hadn't done at all. I read a lot of books. I started down the path of understanding masters and wisdom, and I didn't spend much time on that sort of thing. I actually lost 10 grand to a network marketing company during that same period of time. It was a personal development company called Beyond something. They went under not long after I did it, but that was a tuition. I paid some tuition also during that time. But if it weren't for that, and if it weren't for Beyond Freedom is the name, if it weren't for all the other stuff that I had been doing along that path, I wouldn't have read the Career Builder ad that talked about business coaching as a profession and said, oh, that's me. I wouldn't have done that. Yeah. So I believe part of the metamorphosis, the reinvention, is about self-reflection and about what's important now and what's not important now, and what don't I want is just as important as what do I want.
What's important now, what's not important now, and what do I want? Mm-hmm. That's the questions that you ask yourself, you go through. Awesome. Wow.
What was important now at the very beginning was just getting my health back. I couldn't do anything without health. And then getting my mind right. And then starting to imagine myself in that next place, whatever that looked like.
How long did that take?
It was 9 months.
That's a long time.
Mm-hmm. It was. It happened in March. My meningitis happened in March, early March, and it was early November when I flew to Sacramento to take my business coach training, or end of October, maybe end of October.
Wow.
Maybe not quite 9 months, but that whole year. 2000.
So how did it change you? Do you think this experience?
I give it credit for who I am today. So there's no way it didn't change me. It changed me in every single way. It helped me grow as a leader. It helped me grow as a mother. It helped me grow spiritually. It created for me a new life that I didn't even know I could have. So it's ironic that the name of the company was Beyond Freedom, where I signed up and lost money, because that's where I ended up. Like I ended up beyond. I wanted to wake up every day and do what I love. And I've always wanted that in my life. I haven't always had that, but I've had it for enough times to know what the difference is. So I know what it feels like.
Wouldn't you think that, like, just the name self-development or professional development, whatever, the name of that, it's kind of a misnomer, isn't it? Because my experience is when you're developing yourself and you're going through that type of thing and you're actually reinventing, it's more like there's a letting go of layers of garbage that were set up and accumulated up till then.
Yeah, it's cultivating the soil, isn't it? It's like taking the weeds out. It's watering the good parts. Definitely, 100%.
The assumption is I'm going to grab this new stuff and add it to my life. I'm going to reinvent myself as this whole new person. But the reality is you're letting go of all the fake stuff, and you really are is starting to be presented to the world.
Yes, and it's surprising, because I didn't know that I could be those things, or that I was those things that had expired. I didn't even have the self-awareness to know that until I could look back on it a little bit and say, "Ooh, yeah." So I was a pretty good salesperson. I was a pretty good sales leader. If I know now what I didn't know then, or if I knew then what I know now, I would have been a heck of a lot better.
Yeah, of course.
But you can't. I mean, you really have to just keep looking forward. And for me, I, over the years, have continued to cultivate that garden and let stuff go and let more stuff go and pare down, and what's important now, that's not important now, let it go. And the only way to make yourself fully expressed in the world is to be willing to destroy things so that you can create them.
That's very well said. So listen, you're a mom. What was it like becoming a mom for you? Tell me about your kids. Well,
as I said earlier, it's the only thing I ever knew I wanted. We have a large family, and I had already had nieces and nephews that I got to play with and nurture and mother. And so when I had Megan, I remember thinking I was scared to death, because something could happen to her.
Yeah.
Like, I had this overwhelming sense of, oh my gosh, I can't lose her. That she's everything. And I carried that fear with me for a really dumb amount of time, actually. She's 37 and lives in Boston now.
Is that common for moms? I don't know.
I don't know either. I just had a worry that she was perfect, and she was too perfect. Too perfect. So then she's amazing. And then I had Keith 2.5, almost 3 years later, and he was a terror. Yeah, Keith is a terror. He was the most precocious child you've ever met, and he was loud, and he was active, and he was like a pinball machine. He was the ball, and he definitely challenged me as a parent. And now he is the father of my 2 grandsons. He lives in Virginia Beach, married to his wife, Melissa, and he is a systems engineer for a government contractor working on top secret stuff. I can't even know what he does. And so, that precocious stuff must have worked out somehow.
Must have.
Yeah.
You close to him? Was it like that growing up?
It's difficult because both my kids live away. I'm really proud of the fact that they are confident and independent enough to live completely, like 14 hours each of them. Megan lives in Boston. Keith lives in Virginia Beach. Megan and I, because she lives alone and there's nobody in Boston that's family, she texts me every day when she gets home from work. Nice. So we have a daily interaction, which I adore. Keith has a very busy life, and this year it's been even more hectic because there's been working from home with a toddler and a newborn.
Wow.
So I don't get very much of Keith these days, but we are madly in love with our kids still, and they are respectful and wonderful human beings in the world, and I'm just grateful they picked me to be their mom.
I feel the same way about my kids. Sometimes I'm like, how in the world did that happen? It had nothing to do with me.
By the grace of God, George.
Exactly.
So true.
Do you have any stories about family or children that you could share with us? Something that would illustrate what it was like for you guys having kids growing up?
Well, we were kids. So
Yeah.
when
Kids,
we had
kids
Megan,
raising kids.
we didn't know what we didn't know. Thank goodness we might not have done it. But yeah, Megan, when she was 6 weeks old, she had a fever, which was unusual. And so she had to have some tests at the hospital, and they had to poke her heel with a needle. And I was mama bear freaked out. That was a traumatic experience for me. Maybe not so much for her, but yeah, Keith had burst appendix when he was 9.
Oh my.
And he was really sick, and that was very scary. So both of them had some health things occasionally. But we took not enough vacations. That's one thing Mike and I both say we wish we had done more of. But when we did take vacation, it was always, we went up north a lot and went to places like Traverse City, Michigan, which is probably a lot like Vancouver and Upper Canada. Very, very beautiful, God's country, nature. My kids both love to fish, and my husband, we have a lot of pictures of them fishing together with the whatever dog of the time we had.
So good.
Yeah. So those are fond memories. Megan was very skilled as a singer, and she was in one of the elite singing groups at her school. And the first time I saw her on stage belting out a song, I was like, whoa. Yeah. Keith was also very talented musically. He played trumpet, and he was in the jazz band, and he would be up there shucking and jiving with his trumpet. And I was like, oh,
that's amazing.
Kids.
I know.
So, it's those regular parental moments when your kids are doing something so cool.
You'll really never forget them, for the rest of your life. Like, those are wonderful moments forever. And don't you still see them like that? I mean, they're adults and they doing all this stuff. When they come over or whatever, it's like you laugh because I remember when you were 2, you were just like that.
Especially when, I don't know, you're not quite there. I don't think you have grandchildren yet, do you?
No.
Okay, so when you're seeing them through the eyes of their children.
Yeah.
Keith asked me just the other day, Mom, was I really this bad? And I'm like, yep. You were.
So good.
Hello, Karma.
Yes. There's a quiet satisfaction when that happens. That's really great. Yeah.
I don't like to admit that much, but I just did.
Remember, my oldest son moved out. He moved across the country with his girlfriend about 2,000 miles away. And he would call me. He's like, Dad, I'm really sorry. I was really critical of you and Mom, and like, you were amazing with Mom. I start having these conversations. It's really hard to not laugh.
I have never heard anything like that come from my children's lips.
Oh,
but maybe someday, George.
Maybe someday. It is really satisfying for sure. What would you like your children or grandchildren to remember about you?
That I loved them with every piece of my being. It's all about love for me, George. That's the only thing I want to be remembered by is how did I love? That's
really awesome. So what are your greatest accomplishments, do you think, in your coaching work? Like, what are you most proud of?
Oh my gosh, that's hard. Whew. There's a couple things that come just to mind. They're not exclusive. There's a lot. 3. I'll give you 3. One time there was a man who was a professional pianist. He was also chair of his School of Music department at college. And he did performing as an entrepreneur, and he got in our session, he said, there's a Steinway grand piano that I have always wanted. I've always dreamed of a Steinway grand. And
wow.
He said, but I played it. It's because it's all about the sound of the piano. I don't know much about that, but there's a sound that they look for.
I have a friend that does that. Yeah, it's huge for them. Yeah.
Perfect for me. It's got just the right sound. It's the piano of my dreams, but I can't afford it. And I basically said, what if you could? And we created about 5 different ways that he could figure out how the money part, including negotiate the price. The next 2 weeks later, the piano was purchased, he was reorganizing his entire house around this piano, making sure the carpet was right and the paint was right. And he now still lives with that. He's moved once and that piano's with him. So that's a cool story. The other day I was in a coffee shop with another client, not the other day, it was last year before COVID. I was in the coffee shop with another client, and a guy came up to me who was a former client and said, Charisse, I just couldn't walk by you without saying, you need to know this. I now write for a living, because back in the day when I was coaching him 10 years earlier, I was the one that said, you are a writer. And he didn't believe himself until I said it. And when I said it, he started to make ways toward that as a career, and now he's doing it. So that makes me happy. And then the third one, when I started working with a client, he was living in a camper on his farm while his wife and 4 daughters lived in their house, not happy in his marriage. And a lot of things happened, and a lot of bad things and a lot of good things. And now I see pictures of them together on Facebook showing up, and he's glowing about his wife. So
amazing.
I don't take credit for that. I was just with him during that part of the journey and all those parts.
You have to tell me about the piano guy. Like, what happened when you went back and there was this piano? Like, what was that like?
Well, he played it for me. He gave me some of his music. It was very rewarding to know that he made that happen, and without me, he might not have, but who knows? Somebody else might have come along and said the same thing. So I give the credit to God and fate and all that, but it's pretty cool that he's still a musician, and he still plays. I think he still works at a university, and he also does performances. He's a professional pianist.
It's extraordinary and humbling to be a witness to human beings that are making these incredible commitments, isn't it?
It is. It's a privilege to be in the space.
I'm bawling half my life around the people I'm around.
I know you are, George. I'm a crier
so
too, but I probably don't bawl as much as you do. Got to keep my stiff upper lip, I hang around David for the British guy too much to.
Yeah, that's true. So what would you say your current philosophy of life, not your philosophy of life, your current one, because they do change.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I'm so much clearer now than I ever was. So the philosophy that I work really hard at living is be present, be here now, especially in light of all the stories that we hear about all the things that happen to people. Sometimes as I get older, I hear more stories of people dropping dead my own age.
Yeah, I know.
So I want to be sure that everybody who's important to me knows how I feel, and that I make a difference every day for someone. And that can't happen if I'm not present in today. That can't happen if I'm worrying about money for the future or whatever it is I might be worrying about. Worry has been a demon my whole life, probably planted when I was a young girl.
Yeah.
My mom's side of the family, we come from a champion line of warriors.
Yeah, I'm a professional warrior as well.
So giving up worry and replacing it with faith and also presence, I think it's the game plan for me right now.
I don't think it's an accident that the most remembered place for you in childhood was nature. It's like God was preparing you, for your whole life. And given you're a professional warrior, and nature, right?
And then there's the rest of the story, right? So I recently decided that I was going to tag along with my husband when he retired at the end of this year. And I have never even, the word retirement has not been in my vocabulary ever. I didn't think I would ever stop doing this work because I'm so fulfilled by it. But I got the idea a couple months ago that I need a full stop. I need if nothing else, a sabbatical, a stop.
Yeah.
I'm tired. I'm just tired. This year has worn me out. And at the same time, my husband and I sold our home, downsized 75% of our stuff. And then we bought a camper because our kids don't live here, and we knew we wanted to spend some time camping with them. So we bought a camper, and then we were looking for a piece of land close by on a lake so that we could put our camper there and have a easy access lake property to play on. Mm-hmm. Well, when we did that, we found our dream property. We found a 9-acre piece of property on a lake with the woods. Wow. And that camper parking idea became, I guess we're going to build a home on this property. And George, I'm telling you what, it is everything and some that my childhood location was. It's marshy. I'm sure there is a gigantic frog that lives there. I'm sure of it.
There has to be. You got to send me a pic.
And the most gorgeous and most profound part of this is when we looked at this property, I got to the top of this hill, which is where the building site is, and I looked out onto the lake, and I just got the words, "You are home."
Wow.
And who can argue with that, right?
That's beautiful.
Who can argue with it? So I get to build a home that will also include a retreat space on the lower level walkout. And I will be able to help people find their way back home in a setting that's connected, that's grounded, so that my experience as my savior, nature as my savior growing up, I will offer that to the world in a very unique way as soon as the home is built.
Yeah.
In a year. But it's
coming
so
sometime
cool.
In 20 something.
Yes, exactly. And it's so cool how full circle all that is, and how nature really, God put that on here on this planet for us.
Absolutely.
And it's so easy to take it for granted and to kill it with things.
Yeah.
So I'm so grateful to know that now. I didn't know it until recently, really, how powerful it is for me. Until I stood on the top of that hill again, and I was like, oh.
Really cool.
Yeah.
Wow. What an incredible thing. So listen, I just want to know, what advice would you give to 20-somethings right now? If you had a room full of 20-somethings.
I have a 25-year-old that is on my coaching docket right now.
Wow.
Boy, is that different.
Yeah. I know.
Okay, so.
Wait. Before you answer that, how different? Like, what do you mean? What are you thinking of?
I am reminded all the time how much a 25-year-old just doesn't know.
Yeah.
Like, you just.
And they think they do.
They think they do. Oh, she's very. Yeah, she's certain she knows, but he doesn't know, and it's just interesting. If I were 25 and I had somebody like me looking back, I wish 25-year-olds could know they didn't know, and to be curious. That's what I would say. Be as curious, have as many adventures as you can, be around as many diverse people as you can, visit places that scare you. Be curious, because you have the energy, you have the strength, you have sometimes the financial ability, sometimes not, but just fill your life with experiences and not things. You think you need to accumulate things like shiny cars and shiny houses and shiny shoes, and you don't.
Yeah.
You don't need that.
So
skip that.
It's funny because they'll eventually come anyways if you don't care about it.
Yep.
Yeah.
It happens anyway, but wouldn't it be nice if I didn't have to get rid of 75% of the stuff I owned a year ago? That would be really nice.
We moved in June this year, and we're still getting rid of stuff. We got rid of so much stuff. It's crazy.
Yeah. Stuff. And it's stuff.
I know, and I still confront Lorene, my wife Lorene. I'm like, is it time to get rid of this? I'm not ready yet. Well, at least she knows she's not ready yet to let go of that thing. She knows she's never going to use it again. She's just not ready to let that one go, right?
Yep.
So, well, Charisse, it's been awesome. Thanks for being with us today. And with me, and what I do at the end of every one of these shows, my second one, but I'm going to do it until I die. I'm going to do this. But James Lipton, I don't know if you remember who James Lipton is. He had Inside the Actors Studio every Sunday. I'd watch it back in the 90s and whatnot. I love James Lipton because he would always do this thing at the end. He would ask 10 questions to his guests, and I do that as well. So I'm going to ask you 10 questions, and just tell me the thing that comes off the top of your head. None of this, oh, I should have said that later. The thing you're going to say is the thing you meant to say, and that's how we want to approach it. You ready?
Yep.
All right. What's your favorite word?
Love.
What's your least favorite word?
Hate.
What turns you on? Sorry, what was that?
Too easy. Hate.
Oh, too easy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Too easy.
What turns you on?
Me on? Art.
What turns you off?
Disease.
What sound or noise do you love?
Birds.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Guns.
What's your favorite curse word?
Fuck. Can I say that out loud?
Yeah, sure.
You asked.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Other than my own. I'm going to count art as my own, so I can't say that. Doula.
What?
A doula. A woman who coaches a woman having a child, giving birth.
Oh,
Birth
wow.
coach.
Didn't know that was what that was called.
Yeah.
What profession would you like not to do?
Nurse.
And if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
I've always loved you.
Oh, man. That one hit me. And I love you. Thank you so much for being today.
I love you. I love you. I love you more.
Okay, you win.